Tragedy struck as Gerald Ford dies after an attack by an alligator just outside Disney World. It's an ancient Saturday Night Live skit. Back when, hell, that was Dana Carvey, I think. Back when they had some funny comedians on that show. Been a long time since long-time showrunner Lorne Michaels has put out anything decent out of that show. But I digress. Greetings, everybody. Good old Wolfie here. I'm tired. And I apologize for not streaming either this weekend or last weekend. I've just been really dragging. And I don't think it's the vaccine, because it's, I don't know if I published those videos or not. So in case I didn't mention it, 2 weeks ago, Wednesday, I went and got the first dose of the Shaolin Shakes vaccine. And didn't have any problems or complications with it the day I took it or the day after. Now, that Friday, a couple days after I took it, I was just kind of wiped out, just tired and fatigued. So I actually had to wave off from work for the day, and that was annoying. But I don't think this is related to that. This weekend, or this whole past week, I've just been exhausted because of daylight savings time. Completely screws me up every spring. It happens every year. And it's just because I can't adapt to having to go to bed earlier and waking up earlier. And it just messes with my head. It takes a while to adjust. But I'm getting there. Basically haven't done anything interesting for a couple of weeks anyway, so no biggie. I'm let's see, I had to get one last thing notarized yesterday, or Friday, and related to the divorce. And I think, if I understand the process correctly, that's the last document that she and I have to sign together. She already had it notarized, and they sent me the notarized copy, and I had to get mine notarized, blah, blah, blah. It's stupid. But it's basically an agreement, a joint motion to the court saying, hey, we're kosher, we think we've got everything settled, we're willing to waive our right to a final in-person hearing with the court. Our lawyers have their instructions, and it all looks kosher, so here, go look over this settlement agreement and make sure it looks sane to you, and if it does, then, I think my attorney specifically has to write the final judgment, which sounds so epic, doesn't it? And the judge rubber stamps it, and as soon as that gets signed and ruled on by the court, then that is the divorce decree. So that's probably coming in the next week or two. And then that'll be it. Just waiting on the refi, which seems to be going along just fine. It's in that vague... There's three stages, I guess, of the... Well, no, 4 stages they do this. It's obnoxious. The first is the application, and that's where you first contact them, and then you fill out a bunch of paperwork, or they do it for you. They ask you questions, and interview you, and all that kind of shit. And then you furnish your bank statements. They pull your credit. You show them pay stubs, your taxes. Basically prove that you make money and you're credit worthy enough to, buy a house. And then they go through all that junk, and they call that the application process. And then it goes to what I guess they call it processing. And that is where, from what I understand, that's where they that's where they make you get the appraisal, which had to do. and they request any other documentation they need that they decide they need. And in this case, wasn't really any, because they had it all from the last time I tried to refinance, and things went south with the divorce. But so they could reuse all of that. They couldn't reuse the appraisal because it was too old, but whatever. So that part was pretty straightforward. And then they had to change a couple things around because the appraisal came in a little bit lower than the lender was hoping. First time I've ever seen that, actually. But whatever, it works out for me. And then apart from that, processing is done, and now it's been sent on to the underwriters. I guess those are the actual people with the purse strings who decide final yes or no, or we need more info, or blah blah blah. It's usually uneventful, so that's where it is now. And then after underwriting asks their questions, if any, and gives approval, or final approval, then that means, loan is approved and it's time to close. And that's the fourth phase of it. You go to closing. So, who knows how fun that's going to be? Because that involves getting a piece of paper, very important piece of notarized paper from somebody who hasn't responded to my emails for 3 months now. Probably just going to go to her lawyer over it. Go to her lawyer. Yeah, so that's really all that's going on in that department. Pretty close to done. We go our own separate ways. What else is going on? I came across... So I don't have anywhere near the money to do this right now, so this is that old Ceph project again that I've wanted to play with for years. And it's still just got to be a thought in my head and not something I can actually act on. Ceph is that distributed data storage system. It does things in like objects. It's an object store with all sorts of redundancy and failover and self-healing, that sort of thing. And apparently, if you put it on good enough hardware, it's pretty damn fast. And that kind of segues into the stuff I was planning on using for it. These little Odroid bitty computers. They're like $60 a piece. And they're, 4 or 8 cores. Little ARM CPUs. They have this particular flavor of it. They have a whole bunch of Odroids. This particular flavor has a built-in SATA port and a case that'll hold a 3.5-inch disc, just one. And that suits it fine because it's got only one disc port, or 2 gigs of memory. So it'd be enough to run an OSD for Ceph. And there's ancillary costs to go with that, like they need a storage device. So apart from the cloud storage device, the big hard disk, 14 terabyte, whatever, it needs a little bit of eMMC memory, just like a 8 gig partition for the OS to live on, and logs and that sort of thing. So that's another 15, $20 per unit. And I think I can power 4 of them off of a single power supply and a fan out cable that combined costs about $20. So an extra $5 each per unit to power them. And it's not prohibitively expensive, but the unit cost does get up there per node. And when you get up to, it essentially means if you want 8 nodes, you're going to be dropping about $800. And you're cobbling together a Ceph cluster out of really low power, computers that aren't the best performers in the world. I'm after pulled pork. That's where I've driven to. This is my first outing for a couple of weeks, apart from my trip over to the notary. Stand by. I'm back. Order placed. So there's, get 8 nodes off the ground. You're looking at about $800 plus the cost of the discs, which is going to be the same no matter what no matter what your nodes end up looking like, because you still got to buy the discs. Then there's networking them together. And if you want to, even just going nuts with this at the consumer level, this is still going to be a baby-sized Ceph cluster, because from my understanding, they've got this thing up into like petabyte range. Okay, I am back. Jesus, I look droopy. Look like I'm wrecked. Look like I'm stroking out or something. Well, I don't think my speech is too slurred. Let me know if it is. I'm driving in a straight line and haven't hit anything, so if I'm having a stroke, it's a very gentle one. And find out tomorrow when my left leg stops working and I don't know. But anyway, so in addition to the individual node cost for a Ceph cluster, you got to look at network equipment, gigabit switch, probably some 24 port or even a 48 port beastie so that you can plug in, dozens of these things and build a big cluster. And those are, you get to 24 port, those are maybe $150, $200. 48 port, and you're starting to get up into the $350 range, and that's for a decent brand. I think that was D-Link, TP-Link, one of them. It's not a bad brand, and for the kind of low pressure, low volume work this would be doing, it's perfectly fine. I think one of them was even a managed switch for like $350. As long as the brand isn't Cisco, I guess that's actually competitive, because Cisco stuff is still so ridiculously overpriced. But yeah, so you're looking at like a good $1,000 just to set up an 8-node cluster without the disks. And so that got me thinking, and I came across a thread on Kiwi Farms yesterday evening about, probably Thursday evening, about alternative architectures for different things, different ICEs. Instead of Intel, AMD, and ARM, there are other computer chip ISAs, or ISAs, that stuff like PA RISC, Spark, MIPS, what were the other ones? There's a bunch of them. And a newer one, RISC-V, that they're actually starting to build some silicon for, finally. But it got me thinking again about going back to ARM, because I don't really feel like waiting for that alternatives market to unscrew itself and start producing real products. I was reminded of this company that I had actually talked to a few years back. They're called Embedded. It's the word embedded with an A instead of an E at the start. And they build it's a custom design. They designed a server themselves that is specifically designed as a Ceph hosting system. And it's a 1U rack mountable server, holds 8 disks, and has 8 separate ARM-based microservers inside it. And they're all connected with redundant, with a pair of 2.5 gigabit interlinks that two fabrics, 2.5 gigabits each, and they're all connected to both fabrics. So within the node, or within the chassis, all the nodes can talk to each other at 2.5 gigabits. And I think they even do link bonding, so they can probably get away with 5 gigabit signaling back and forth between nodes, which is great. That's wonderful speeds. And then externally, if I understand the new specs correctly, they have 4 redundant SPF ports that can do 10 gigabits each. So, you could slap a bunch of these on a shelf or a rack at a data center. Standard 42U rack, put 8 14 terabyte disks on them. I did the math on this a couple days ago. I forgot the number. It's something like 600. No, it was more than that. Way more than that. I think you could get. You could push past the petabyte capacity mark. Hey, you'd have to, because you got 14 terabytes times 8, and then multiply that by 42, and divide it by multiply it by 0.75, because you got 25% redundancy on it with erasure coding. So yeah, you can shoot into the petabyte range on a single 19-inch rack in a data center, which is insane. And they claim that the performance of these things is really, really good, and I don't really have any reason to doubt it. And they didn't have, they list a bunch of distributors around the world. They're based in Taiwan, but their website claimed that they have a U.S. distributor, and they give a name for it, but it's like AXC or something, and no expansion of that acronym. And you search for those 3 letters, you don't get anything. And there's no link. So I just emailed them and go, hey guys, what's up? I want to build a Ceph cluster. It's going to be small. This is for personal use. So I'm probably a small volume buyer, but I want to know how much these cost and how do I get started buying 1 or 2 of them? And to my surprise, they actually wrote back. And they asked me a bunch of questions, and they explained that they do have a company in America that they do distribution with, but they weren't completely clear, but the impression I got was that they're not strictly made to order. They're just shipped from Taiwan on demand. So there's no company in the U.S. that has a warehouse full of these things. They are essentially a shell company in the U.S. that is just an authorized reseller. But they asked me a whole bunch of questions like, what's this going to be used for? How big do you want to end up scaling it out? How big do you want to start it with? And I'm sure that my answers did not impress them because, they're used to building clusters in the petabyte to exabyte range, because Ceph can handle that. They're used to building giant clusters for universities with huge budgets that just need gigantic storage clusters. And they're not used to getting approached by Joe Schmo with some disposable income that he wants to throw at a couple toys. I did actually contact them 5 years ago when they had an earlier version of this same concept available. It still had, I think this one had 9 microservers in it. One of them was just sort of a central controller type server. The other 8 were attached to a disk connection. So again, it's a 1U unit that held 8 disks, and it was designed to run Ceph. And when I contacted them back then, I asked them point blank, hey, do you guys ever ship out samples? Could I test one for a while and maybe ship it back or keep it if you don't mind? I didn't say it that way, but I totally asked them for, to lend me one for free. And they said, no. But they replied and said, well, no. we don't do that for personal, for individuals, and we can't find anything about your business, so we're not comfortable with that. And I go, no, there's no business. This is just personal, hobbyist stuff. But I'm serious about making a purchase. I just need to know how much these things are so I can budget and start, getting ready to buy it. They did actually answer. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, they're $1,000 a unit without the discs. And, that's a bit of sticker shock, but then when you think about it, 8 nodes of these little Odroids are going to cost about $800 plus the network equipment or whatever. So you're just $200 away from the El Cheapo build, and you're getting a much faster integrated system. Because even the old Mars 100, I think it was called, that still held 8 disks, and it's still, or maybe it was 7, but whatever, it's still pretty good. And it still had the really high-speed network fabric internally between all the internal nodes, and it still had 10 gigabit external connections too. So I mean, that's pretty competitive for what you're getting. You're buying 8 servers that can hold a total of 8 disks in a 1U unit that uses like 150 watts of power at full blast, and just ungodly fast networking and decent I/O. So that's actually not that expensive. So this time when I wrote them, and they asked me a bunch of questions and wrote back, and they even said, yeah, let us know what what time of day works best for you. We're in Taiwan, but we could probably arrange a phone call meeting with you, in the morning your time. And and so I wrote back and answered all their questions and said, oh, this is awesome. Thanks for getting back to me. I look forward to talking to you. Told them what I'm after. I told them what I have. The average Joe Blow doesn't have a NAS that holds like 140 terabytes of capacity. So I like to think that might help convince them that I'm not just trying to waste their time, because I'm totally not. And if you embedded guys are watching, please tell me. I just want to know how much they cost. I will buy one, and then I'll buy another one, and then another one. Takes me time to save up money, but I'll get it done. I'm finishing up a divorce and a refinance and paying fucking tax bill. Got a lot of shit going on this month. God damn. But I'm making money. I'll do it. But yeah, I replied Friday, and I'm sure they were out of the office for the day at that point for the weekend. But maybe they'll get back to me this Monday or tomorrow and tell me what they actually charge for these new versions. The Mars 400 is what it's up to. And if it's not something insane, like if they don't come back and say, well, it's $2,000, that's a bit high. But if they come back and say it's $1,000 or $1,500 is tolerable, then I'll give it some pretty serious consideration. I told them in my email, I was point blank, said, yeah, I've got a bunch of stuff to take care of for now, but 3 to 4 months I'll be ready to start rolling something out. And I was serious. I mean, I've wanted to play with Ceph for a long time, and this is if they're even remotely competitive on price, this is a good excuse, as good an excuse as any. As good an excuse as any. I guess I am slurring my speech. Well, I have some pulled pork to eat, so I'm going to wrap up this video. And once again, I'm sorry for not live streaming these past couple of weeks. I've just been busy, it's one of those crawl into my shell and keep to myself kind of weeks. And I don't know why really, but I've found that it's not worth trying to force myself out when I'm feeling like this. It just ends up feeling better when I don't do that. But there's some new games fighting for attention. I know X4 just had a new DLC drop, and Dyson Sphere program is actually pretty cool. So I'd like to stream that as well. And we still have Fire Emblem 3 Houses to pick back up on and go play and finish up. So there's lots of stuff coming. Just a little tired this week, so sorry for that. But I'll catch everybody later. Thanks for listening, and have yourselves a great night. Take care.